My name is Martin Pratchett. I'm the Engineering Practice Manager at Engineering New Zealand. I'll be joined a little bit later on by Tiffany Matsis. She's the team leader for the legal team, and walk you through the complaints process. But what I'll be dealing with is we get some pretty common threads with the complaints at Engineering New Zealand, and what are those common complaints and how can you avoid them? And so the basic ones are that, the majority of the complaints that we get are centered around communication, right? But we've also got difficult clients. A lot of the problems stem from contracts, either poorly written or non-existent contracts. There's also technical issues in there, but they actually the minority of the complaints that we receive. Then I'll hand it over to Tiffany, and she'll run you through the process and of the complaint system. And so communication is the background for 60% of the complaints that we get, right? And why is that? And so one of the things is that as engineers, sometimes we're not the best communicators. It can be pretty easy to, particularly if we're busy, start to bury our heads in the ground and say, look, I'm just not going to come back to this person, or, they're getting too hard. And so a failure to reply is pretty common, and that can lead your clients to become pretty frustrated, and then they start to come to Engineering New Zealand. We actually have that same problem when the complaint comes through to us. Often if the engineer has failed to reply to the client, then they'll fail to reply to us as well. And that makes it really hard. It drags out the process, and it makes it more difficult for the engineer, as well as the legal team and the client. And so my suggestion there is, first of all, reply to your clients. Do keep a record of the communication. But if something does start to happen, then and the legal team have to get in touch with you, then get back to them promptly and just provide the information that they're looking for. Another one is failure to notify clients of issues. And so if you're starting to find that you've got some issues that are arising, it could be the timing of getting the job out the door. It could be that the price is starting to creep up, or maybe when you're doing the job, you're getting some variations and the cost is increasing, or the time the project could take is extending out. People want to know this, and if they don't know it, then it upsets them. And once again, that can be a pretty common cause of the lack of communication. Another thing that happens is that we can be perceived to be fairly rude and arrogant, and that's, once again, sometimes we're not the best communicators, and we don't always have the best people skills. It's something that we can learn, but it's easy to come across as being rude or arrogant, even if we don't mean to be, right? And there have been a number of engineers who have had the problems exacerbated because of that attitude. What we're going to do is fairly soon, Tiffany and I are just putting the finishing touches on an article that runs through these problems and provides solutions and resources that you can use to help overcome, communication issues, and tips and tools that you can use to practice. So difficult clients, right? Now, our most common thing is that when we're dealing with an engineer who has been dealing with a difficult client, is that they'll say, oh, I kind of figured that something was wrong with him, but I took the job anyway. First piece of advice, you don't have to take the job, right? If they come across as being someone who's going to be a bit of a pain in the bum, don't do it, right? Just walk away. It's trust your gut, and so if you've got a gut feeling that that person is not going to go down well, just don't take the job, right? If you do take the client and they start to become a difficult client, we can tell, okay? And so it's actually really, really obvious when the communication streams come through from the client and the engineer, and we can just sit down and we can go, wow, okay, the engineer's stuck between a bit of a rock and a hard place here. The client's being difficult and unreasonable. Keep the paper trail, right? And so if you're having telephone conversations, keep notes and store them in a file. Keep the email communications. And once again, when the legal team asks you for that communication, send it through to us, right? Because the more information that you can provide to us, the easier it is to make that judgment call. So yeah, keep the communication with them, keep the written records of any telephone conversations or, site meetings that you might have. Now there's resources that we've got on the internet. I realize that the web page isn't always the easiest thing to use. And so what I've done is I've generated these QR codes. And so I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds here. If you can, get your phone out and take a snapshot of that QR code, because that will take you to the website on the appropriate place where you can download some of these tools. If anybody wants to see that afterwards, then give me a yell and I'll send it through to you. Now, contracts. We lead on to contracts. Now, as far as I'm aware, unless you're working for larger firms, most people don't get taught how to write a good contract. And a fair number of the complaints that will come through are generated because there is no contract or it's very poorly written. So one of the things is always have a contract. We supply them for free, right? They are on the Engineering New Zealand website. Short form agreement, just put in a short form agreement. If you've got nothing else, short form agreement works really well. Never start the work unless you've got a contract, right? And then what you need to outline is the scope of work, right? And what you are agreeing to do and what you're not agreeing to do as well. And so engineers do avoid complex complaints with contracts. And we have got examples that I'll be showing you later where a complaint's come through, the engineers had their contract, they sent that through, and we can just say, engineer plainly said that they weren't going to be doing that inside their scope of work, and the complaint just disappears, right? So once again, it's a free download from our website with a QR code. I'm assuming that most of you know where that is on our website, but once again, take a second or so, take a photo of it with your phone and go from there. But the question is, what is good enough, right? And one of the things is that we're not lawyers, we're engineers. And so we don't have the legal background. When I was talking to Tiffany about this and I said, do you have some examples of what good looks like? And she said, well, they're not fabulous contracts, and I said, but we're not lawyers, we're engineers. And so, but what's been good enough to get people out of the complaint in the past? And so absolute legend that she is, she dug through and found some examples. And so here's one here, right? This is anonymized, and once again, we will be putting this out with the resource that we're producing. And so this is good enough, okay? And why is it good enough? It covers the scope. And so, the project is clearly stated. It's got the location in there. It's got a proposed driveway and boundary retaining wall between these two properties. The scope and nature of the services, geotech investigation for the ground conditions, right? It's got the timber pole retaining wall, building consent, construction observation, and your final construction completion, PS4, okay? Now, what they do say in here is that they will be producing the plans or them in DWG format. Now, one of the things that or some issues that I've struck in the past is that sometimes engineers won't release the DWG files. That's fine. If you're not going to, state it in your contract, right? Just say, we will be supplying these in PDF, okay? And that's you're fine. If you say that you're going to provide them in DWG, then you've got to, right? If you don't, then you don't. So make sure that you note down what you're going to do. The timing is covered, right? And so it's pretty clearly stated in here exactly what they're going to be doing, and it also has the payments, right? So in here it's got the design stage, it's got the construction stage, it's got the payments that they're expecting, and it's saying that the above fees exclude any scheme change or council charges, right? So pretty clearly stating in there what it's saying and what it's done, what it's doing. But it's also saying what is the information that is needs to be provided by the client. Okay, and so you've got the site plans and the initial DWG file there. And so, as I say, they've also covered the variations to the contract. Now, this isn't big, right? This is just a single page. The second page is just the standard terms and conditions that we have. But this is one of the ones that came in, and that was, you know, a complaint was made against the engineer. We could see what the engineer had promised that they would do. The client was being unreasonable, and it just got, you know, just dismissed straight away. Easy, almost stress-free win for the engineer, right? Just that is good enough. Okay. So technical issues. When you're doing it, work within your bounds of competence, right? It sounds a little bit silly sometimes, but what we're supposed to do as engineers is to make sure that we know what we're doing, you know, because it's pretty important. We do important work. If you've got something that's a little bit out of left field, check it with an engineer who is experienced in the field, not just your mate down the road, you know, although they may be experienced in that field, in which case that's a good person to bounce the idea off of. But feel free to pick up the phone. When I was working as an engineer, I was, you know, you can get some apprehension about bringing these people who tend to be experts at something. In my experience, actually, they answer the phone and everybody's human, right? And so it's not as daunting as it may be. And so if you've got something, then you can always pick up the phone, and people will help you out. Have a good quality checking method, right? And then use it. Now, there's actually some resources that I've started publishing on the website. The last one got put up yesterday, sorry, about a quality management system, which you can just go to and you can download it. You can use that for your company. There's also some calculation checklists on the website now that you can take and use if you haven't got anything else, right? But having a quality assurance and quality control system is vital. This month's learning from disciplinary decisions is going to be about the Southland Stadium collapse, and the vast majority of the problems were there was that the engineer wasn't working within their bounds of competence, and he didn't have a QA and QC system. And so join local groups, you know, to establish a network of peers, because if you don't know who you can reach out to, then that makes life really hard. And if we're a sole practitioner or working in a small firm, then, you know, once again, so join things like the EGP or the CSOC group or your geotechnical society or branches or whatever else it might be that's relevant for you. Get a coffee group going of people that are in the local area, right? It's if you need a hand, give me a call. I can put you in touch with people. And so once again, the resources are at the QR code, you know, the checklists and so on. That's on the guidelines page of our website, which is, if you go onto Engineering New Zealand, Engineer Tools, Engineering Documents, and follow your nose from there. Otherwise, follow that QR code. Now, and from here, I will hand over to Tiffany, because this is your one. I'm still controlling the PowerPoint, so just say, click away when you're ready for me to click, all right?
Okay, you can bring up the whole, can you hear me, everyone?
Yep.
Great. You can bring up yep, perfect, thank you. So just covering over basically what the complaints process is for. The public places significant trust in engineers to self-regulate. So as a professional, you have to take responsibility for being competent and acting ethically. The actions of an individual engineer play an important role in the way that the whole profession is viewed by the public. And professional disciplinary processes primarily exist to protect the public, uphold professional standards, and maintain public confidence. And we do this by ensuring that members of the profession adhere to accepted professional standards. The thing to remember is that we're not out to punish engineers. So next slide, please, Martin. Thank you very much. So I just thought I'd talk you a bit through the process, just to demystify a bit, because it can all seem a bit overwhelming if you're caught up in the middle of it. Martin's talked you through lots of ways to try and avoid a complaint being brought against you, and this is really valuable. But sometimes, no matter what you do, someone might want to make a complaint, and we wanted to let you know what happens next. So my first really important piece of advice is please stay calm. It's okay. No one likes being complained about, and sometimes no matter what you've done, it happens. So if you've acted ethically and competently, you probably have nothing to worry about, and we will talk you through the process. Please understand there is a process we have to go through, and there are things, as Martin has said, that you can do to help make the process less stressful and more efficient for everyone. So first of all, please be open and talk to us. The first time you'll probably know of a complaint is when we phone you to let you know that we've received a complaint about you. And this is called the initial assessment phase. On the phone, we'll summarise what the person has said and what we need from you. But we know that receiving that phone call can be pretty stressful and unexpected. So we'll follow it up with an email, and we'll set out all the information that we've received from the complainant and what we need you to do next. We'll ask you to look over the complaint, and we'll ask you to reply by a certain date. And when you reply, please be clear and concise. You don't need to go into loads of detail. Just set out what happened, what you did or what you didn't do, and stick to the facts. You can attach any information that you think will be helpful for us to understand what's happened. And please understand that we'll need to provide a copy of your reply to the complainant. So bear that in mind when you're writing it. The next step is that we'll share your reply with the complainant, and we'll ask them to decide whether it answers their concerns. And sometimes it does. Sometimes your clear explanation will be sufficient to help that person understand what happened, why something happened the way it did, and that can be the end of the matter. But if it's not, what happens next is that we'll look at the matter again. We might ask you and the complainant whether you'd be willing to engage in alternative dispute resolution to try and resolve the matter. And this might involve both of you sitting down with a trained mediator at our cost to talk through the situation and to try and come to some common understanding and a way forward. This can be a really valuable opportunity to discuss the situation and to bring an end to the complaint. So if we offer this to you, please really consider it carefully. If both parties don't agree to mediation, then the next step in the process is to refer the matter to an adjudicator. And this is often the part of the process that can upset people, because it might feel like we've accepted the complaint as valid and that we've already started down the path of punishing you. But please know that's absolutely not the case. The legal team, we have no ability to dismiss a complaint. That's a decision for an adjudicator. It's not something we can do because we're not the decision maker. So an adjudicator will look really carefully at all the information that's being provided from both parties. So your clear response earlier in the process is really important here. The adjudicator has a reasonably limited discretion. They are deciding whether there are grounds to dismiss the complaint. And if there are no grounds, they have to refer it on to an investigating committee. The grounds of dismissal are set out in legislation, and they include things like whether there's no applicable ground of discipline, whether the subject matter of the complaint is trivial, whether the alleged misconduct is insufficiently grave to warrant further investigation, or whether the complaint is frivolous or vexatious. And a lot of complaints are dismissed at this stage. We try to make it as efficient as possible, but the time that this stage takes depends on the timeliness of your replies and the complainant's replies, and the availability of our adjudicator. These adjudicators are senior members of the profession and they're volunteers. And as you can probably understand, most of them have pretty busy day jobs, and sometimes things can take time as things like hurricanes and flooding and things crop up. So if the matter is dismissed by the adjudicator, that's it, file closed, and we'll let you know. If the matter can't be dismissed by the adjudicator on any of the prescribed grounds that are set out in legislation, they have to refer it on to an investigating committee. This committee is made up of 3 senior engineers, and at least one of those will be from the same practice field as the engineer being complained about. That committee's job is to look more closely at the information that's being provided and to see if there are any gaps that need filling. And if there are gaps, the committee will direct us to go out and try and find that information. The committee may also decide that it needs independent expert advice. The committee might also ask the parties again to consider alternative dispute resolution if they think that's something that might help resolve the matter. Once the committee's looked at all of the information that's now got available, more information than the adjudicator had, it will go through the same decision-making process as the adjudicator. It'll be looking at all those grounds of dismissal and saying, can we dismiss this complaint on any of these grounds that are set out? If we can, case closed, and we'll let you know. If the investigating committee can't dismiss the complaint, the next step is to refer it on to a disciplinary committee. The disciplinary committee stage is the more formal part of the process, and I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this part of the process because it's hopefully not something you'll ever need to know about. Most of the complaints we receive are resolved well before this stage. For example, we get about 50 complaints a year, and last year we had 2 go through to the disciplinary stage. The year before that was 9, or slightly busier. If a complaint about you reaches this disciplinary stage, we'll carefully talk you through the whole process. You'll be given an opportunity to make submissions, to call evidence, and to have a lawyer represent you at a hearing. If a disciplinary committee upholds the complaint about you, you'll also be given an opportunity to tell the committee what you think an appropriate penalty should be. And we will talk you through all of that if and when that ever comes up. The main thing I would really like you to take away from today is not to panic if you get that phone call from us letting you know that there's been a complaint. And please work with us. We can't give you legal advice on an open complaint, but we will talk to you about the process and what your options are. And we can also put you in touch with a senior engineer who can act as an ethical advisor and a source of support if you think it would help. We know that receiving a complaint is not a pleasant experience, and that's something that lawyers are subject to as well, and we don't like it either. We strongly encourage you, if it happens, to talk to your colleagues and a mentor and get some support and advice. You might want to talk to a legal advisor, that's not essential, but you might also need to notify your insurer, depending on the terms of your policy. Avoiding a complaint from ever arising is absolutely your best form of protection. But if it does happen, don't panic, and please don't ignore it. And we're here to help you as much as we can. I'll open it up for questions. Oh, there's a QR code there, which leads to a managing complaints handbook. It's got a lot more information there. It's available on our website.
Thanks, Tiffany. Yeah, I see we have got some questions coming. We'll start answering those and running them through the panel. So if you can just keep your questions coming, that'd be great. Okay, so panel, I'm opening up these questions to you. This is for Martin and Tiffany probably. When the market turns a bit hangover, if a client is not paying its bills with no reason, is there any way to help the engineer to get the money they owed?
Not through our complaints process, unfortunately. And I should have also mentioned that that's something our complaints process can't be used to do. We can't look at contractual matters. If a client complains about your fees or your invoices or wants you to release a producer statement when they haven't paid for it, that's not something they can use our process for. Those are all contractual matters and you'll need to seek legal advice about those. Likewise, getting money out of a client. Yeah, unfortunately, that's a question for your lawyer.
Thanks, Tiffany. Okay, is Engineering New Zealand complaints process without prejudice basis? If not, how do they affect potential future involvement of engineers insurer in the dispute?
So our process, all the information in our process, we ask the parties to keep it confidential to the process. The decisions that you hear about, the disciplinary decisions, are ones that have gone right through that whole process, and the disciplinary committee has chosen to publish those. Most complaints never become public. We ask the parties to keep those decisions to themselves. We don't allow parties to use those for court proceedings. So usually, yeah, no one else will hear about it unless it reaches that very serious stage.
How confidential is the complaints process? Can the complainant tell others? Are there any limitations on you telling others?
In terms of us telling others, it may come up. We may share that information with the assessment team if and when you're coming up for your reassessment for CPEng. You may be asked to address what happened, just explain it to your assessment panel. In terms of, we wouldn't share it with anyone else unless there are certain exceptions. If there's something really serious happening, if it's a sort of a life safety issue and we need to alert a building consent authority or WorkSafe, that would be pretty rare. I think that has not happened very often. What can we do to stop from the complainants, for example, sharing that information publicly? We ask them, we remind them, but people are people and we can't force them, but we would certainly discourage them from sharing information. That's not what our process is for.
Thanks. If any challenges arise that result in a complaint, will only the engineer who signed the PS1 be held responsible, or will all engineers involved in the project face penalties in the end, or possibly face penalties?
It's a really fact-based situation. It really depends what's happened and who the complainant is, has raised the complaint about. Yeah, usually it's just the person whose name is on the matter, but it depends who has done the work that's been complained about and what we can find out, and sometimes it takes a bit of investigating.
In an investigation by Engineering New Zealand, what distinguishes the level of responsibility of the engineer who signed the PS1 from that of the other engineers involved? I think, Tiffany, that's basically what you covered the previous one.
Right, it's going to depend on the facts of the situation, and that'll be something that the committee, the adjudicator, whichever level of decision making we're at, they will look at that carefully.
Are only CPeng engineers subject to complaints, or all Engineering New Zealand members?
That's a really good question. I probably should have covered that first and foremost. Chartered professional engineers are covered under one set of rules. This is legislation. Engineering New Zealand members, you also sign up to a code of conduct, code of ethical conduct, and they are practically identical, but they are, yeah. So you're both, you're subject to both. If you're a CPeng gender member, you're subject to both. If you're just a member, yeah, same thing. So someone can bring a complaint against you, depending on which hat you're wearing.
How the complaints only taken against the engineer by Engineering New Zealand, not the other way around regarding client issues, e.g. claims? Tiffany, can you understand that?
Is that person suggesting we should be able to penalise clients? Because sometimes that might be very appealing, but no, we can't do that. We've got no jurisdiction over people who aren't CPeng or members of Engineering New Zealand.
Yeah, I think that's what he's implying.
But we don't.
Has there been a summary of complaints against engineers by type or discipline?
We provide an annual report to CPEC, which is the Chartered Professional Engineers Council, which is our sort of oversight body, our appeal body. And that annual report breaks down complaints by sort of practice area. You won't be surprised to hear that the majority are structural, because I guess those are the people who are most likely to be interacting with the public and most likely to possibly receive complaints. And I guess they're a larger proportion of the industry as a whole. So if you go to the CPEC website, which I believe is cpec.org.nz, and look for the annual report there, you can find that breakdown.
Thanks. And then the last question here, what penalties is Engineering New Zealand looking at for an engineer who has been negligent and or in breach of code of ethical conduct after a complaint has been raised and investigated?
So the penalties that we can impose once a complaint has been upheld are set out in the legislation. They're reasonably limited. I mean, the most stringent one obviously would be removing someone from the register. People can be also suspended from the register. There's a fine, a maximum fine of $5,000, can be named and censured. That's all set out by legislation. If you look at our upheld complaints on our website, you'll see some of the previous decisions, and you'll see some of the penalties that have been imposed in those cases.
Okay. So there's another question, just wondering if a consultancy hiring a graduate or intern, making them work as a normal engineer, how does the complaint process work?
That comes back to acting within your bounds of competence. A student engineer should only be doing what a student engineer can do. If someone's asking you to do something beyond your bounds of competence, you need to let them know and stand up for yourself. Complaint is looked at on the basis of what would a reasonable engineer do. We're looking at not looking for best practice or the gold standard. It's what would a reasonable engineer do. So in that case, it would be what would a reasonable graduate do? What would a reasonable student engineer do? It's not looking for, what would someone who's got 30 years experience in the profession have done?
Remembering that when we graduate, we're always working outside of our bounds of competence, right? And so what the process is that when we have that, then we should be given jobs that extend our bounds of competence, right? And we should be mentored to extend that with a checking process in place, right? And so, when I graduated, for example, the first time, simple house design, simple beam design, the engineer, one of the directors gave it to me and said, "Can you design this beam?" I said, "Of course I can. I've learned how to design beams." Looked at the plan and went, "I've got no idea how to design that beam. And then we sat down and worked through it, right? So it wasn't within my bounds of competence. They taught me how to do that, extended it, and then it was checked by a chartered professional engineer.
How supportive is Engineering New Zealand when its members are going through the complaint process?
This is a difficult one because we need to be neutral, we need to be impartial. We can't provide you with all of the support, but we can put you in touch with a senior engineer. We've got some people on our list that can act as ethical advisors to you. We can put you in touch with that sort of support. There's wellbeing resources available on our website. We know it's a stressful process. We can be supportive by talking you through the process and trying to explain what's happening at every stage, but we can't give you advice. We can't be seen to be giving you advice on an open complaint.